Hi, I'm Erin Meese,
And I'm Kristen Ireland.
and we're the co-founders of People Spark Consulting.
Welcome to our podcast, The People Spark, helping ag leaders step out of the weeds with clarity and confidence.
We'll leave a little spark.
Today, we are going to continue our conversations around change. In our last episode, we talked about how do you communicate? What messages do you deliver? What information do you share? Who shares that message to encourage people to come with you? There's always then going to be, so that's how we communicate out to people. Then there's the, what response are you going to get back? How are people going to respond to that message? And as much as we communicate logically, the response that we tend to see in employees is more an emotional type of response. And when I say emotional, I don't mean right, wrong, good, or bad. There's no judgment. It tends to be responding based on feeling. So when we started to work a lot with encouraging people to follow through on the business goals and business initiatives, the leaders, what was your biggest insight about how people responded to change?
So I'm going to answer that question starting with a story. So several years ago, I remember I was driving back from a client, and it was incredibly foggy outside. It was like late spring, so it's cold but damp, and it was very difficult to see much past kind of how far out your headlights could go on the highway. And I remember kind of thinking in that moment, although I was paying attention to the road first and foremost, right? I
Safety
remember
first.
thinking, always. I remember thinking, I wonder, it feels to me like there's a parallel here. Because as a leader, that leader is the person that knows that it's safe up ahead. They're saying, yeah, you just keep going straight. It's fine. You got like 2 more miles of this. Trust me, you're going to get through it. And then you have your team members, you have your employees who are sitting there like I was, holding onto the steering wheel a little too tight, who's saying, I don't know about this. I can only see out to my headlights right now. It is really foggy. So how there's only 2 miles left of this, I'm not sure. And that to me was one of those moments of like, oh yeah, okay, this is how we all feel, where somebody's saying, no, trust me, you've got this. It's safe. Come on, come join me. It's really nice up here. And our team members, they haven't had a chance to go through that yet because they're still experiencing the first part of that change. They're still experiencing the first emotions and the unsteadiness and the uncertainty that goes with it. So, Kristen, what's coming to mind?
Well, this is making me giggle because I feel like we should share kind of what goes on behind the scenes here, that truly we do this. So I did not know that Erin was going to tell that story. And as she started to tell it, I remember the day after when she called me and shared this story with me of like, I had this thought while I was driving home. So she's not kidding. She really did that. And then shared it with me the next day. Although I am surprised you used that analogy and not the driving home from Illinois in a blizzard.
Oh, in a blizzard.
When we were riding, in the rumble strips. So that had to scary in a whole different way. I like the foggy, only seeing the headlights story better in this case.
Yeah. I could see more of the road with the fog story than I could when I had to drive the rumble strips on 94 to make sure I could stay on the road in general.
Right.
So that's why I went with that. It was not as, I could contemplate a little bit more. But it has me, I know in a previous episode, we've talked a little bit about some of those emotional responses to change. And we've talked about it more so around how you as a leader can feel in those emotional responses. And I think it's important then to also consider how our team members go through this change. So in our last episode, Kristen, you mentioned how leaders communicate from the spot that they are in the change, right? So that's the leader that's 2 miles ahead of me on the highway that's saying, yeah, it's safe. Don't worry, it clears up. Meanwhile, the person who's back here kind of gripping the steering wheel is saying, no way, I don't know about this. They're way back on the other end of it. And some of the emotions that can come up that can be triggered with this, I'll come back to kind of that response that that change can create in general,
Hmm.
right? That change, whether it's positively or negatively perceived, creates this sense of loss. And that sense of loss, right? The sense of I don't know where I'm going. I can't see.
Hmm.
Um, that sense of loss of, well, we haven't done it like that before. I'm
Hmm.
really used to the way that we've done these processes before because I've been here for 20 years. I'm not going to be the subject matter expert now if we go forward with some of that. That all of these perceived losses are the catalyst behind starting that emotional change response as we get into more of like that Kubler-Ross change curve.
You know, it's fascinating when you say that because that to me is the biggest thing when we're talking about emotional responses to change and things that can cause resistance is that sense of loss. And when we talk about that, I think that a lot of people automatically think about loss because the change is going to negatively impact them. But you feel that sense of loss if you chose that change or not. So it
Mhm.
could be you could make the decision and still feel loss, and that's okay. It's both. You could have it be ultimately a positive and still feel loss. And one of the activities that we tend to do in person is think about things like kids, right? We choose to have our kids. I love my kids collectively between Aaron and I. Um, I have two, Aaron has three. So collectively, there are five kids that were showing up in different ways as we work together.
Mhm.
But we chose that. There are still losses associated with it. And I'm always fascinated at the responses that people get of what losses do you feel when you have your kids?
Right.
Right? Money, time, privacy. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I even think about that. I mean, let's then transition it to work of the losses that we felt as we left our perfectly good corporate jobs and started People Spark Consulting. I mean,
Mhm.
we very intentionally made that decision. We were excited about it. We were invested. We made a PowerPoint presentation and pitch to our husbands, right? We were there. So there was no doubt that it was a positive and there was no doubt that we wanted to do it. And there were losses that we felt associated with that. And usually when we ask that question about what losses do you think we anticipated, there are the surface ones. Stable salary. Yes, that's a big
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Benefits. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Uh-huh. There were others too of that
Mhm.
loss of feeling like you knew what you were doing. Before we left, when we went to work, you knew what to do. You knew what was expected. That first day when we were full-time and I sat in front of my laptop and went, now what do I do? I don't know what to do. I'm not good at it because I don't even know what I'm doing yet. The loss of friendships and camaraderie that we had established in that organization, the ability to reach out to so many different, subject matter experts at your fingertips, right? You still have them now, but that loss is going to be felt
Mhm.
whether you made the decision or not and whether it's positive or not. And so it's that sense of giving ourselves grace
Mhm.
to allow those feelings to come through and have that be okay.
Did you know that contrary to what we might think, 96% of employees want feedback, whether it's constructive or recognition? Yet another survey found that only 5% of managers provide critical feedback to employees, even though it's important for their development. What's behind this? Nearly half of managers, 44%, find giving feedback stressful. Nearly a quarter, 21%, avoid giving it altogether. They feel it's uncomfortable, they don't want to demotivate employees, and just aren't sure how to do it. And the repercussions of not giving feedback end up impacting you and your business through lower productivity and profitability, decreased employee engagement, and increased employee turnover. I'm Erin Meese with People Spark Consulting. For the last several years, we've built our business around supporting ag supervisors and managers develop their coaching and feedback skills. Why? Because leaders coaching their teams create more engaged teams. And these more engaged teams create the workplaces that bring more employees into the ag industry. Our leadership transformation program was designed to be straightforward and practical, providing content in digestible chunks, supporting participants through personalized feedback, and providing participants an environment to learn with other ag leaders across the industry. You might only have a couple of managers or supervisors, or you might have an entire team of them. PeopleSpark works with you to find the best solution, whether it's joining an open cohort with other ag leaders or having a customized experience that works across your locations. In order to provide the most customized experience for each of our participants, these cohorts have very limited number of seats available each month. If you're interested in more information around what might work best for you and your team, just click on the link in the show notes below or directly go to developagleaders.com. I have a client that we're working with who their business has grown significantly in the last 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
They have added additional team members. So they have like the core team members who have been with the business since it started. And over the last 2, 3 years, they've added a lot more team members, some who are remote, some who aren't based in their main location. And as I was talking with one of their leaders just last week about this, I said, well, let's talk about like what are some of the losses that people are experiencing? Their
Mm.
business is growing significantly. And so you have an administrative team who's used to processing orders and customer orders in a certain way and in a certain volume. We've disrupted that the last couple of years because of new products that have been introduced,
Mm-hmm.
because of new markets that we've gotten into with customers that we don't know as well. So the losses, even just that administrative team has been experiencing, are pretty significant when you start to look at it in that way. When we look at their remote sales team, the losses that they're experiencing, many of them came from bigger organizations. So when you come
Mm.
into a small company, when you come into a family owned organization, things work differently. And you might have to call other people for information or to get information to find out how we're going to process these things. And so your loss that you can feel there is, I don't really know how things get done. I don't know who to go to.
Mm-hmm.
I right, I'm not sure if we can do that. Have we ever done this kind of thing before? And just the individual losses just across that organization, they're going through very positive changes.
Mm-hmm.
And they still feel some of that friction, and so that's some of the undercurrent specifically that we're working on there. And I thought that was just such a good example of, yeah, your business is growing so much in such a short period of time that those growing pains that you're feeling, here's how they're starting to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what we're working on with them specifically is around how to bring some of these things out and understand it and then be able to help step them through as a team around what people need, when they need it, and how to equip them to get there.
Well, and I even think some of the change, some of the individuals that we work with and the clients that we work with have been in role for a long time.
Yes.
So they see their identity as their role. They
Mhm.
were really good at that. They were the go-to person for that, whether it's a system, whether it was answers, whether it was the expertise, whatever. So it's not looking at it in terms of their role is changing. In many cases, we may be changing their identity and
Mhm.
how they felt that they brought value. And now that's moving or that's taking away, even to the extent of when we're talking about changes and what is changing and what's not changing and going through mergers, for example, you're still you're coming to the same location, you're coming to the same people, we say that our intent is not to minimize that change. It's an additional data point. On the flip side of that, somebody has worn the same shirt
Yeah.
for 25 years. That's so they may go
Mhm.
to the same location, but that name that they've been associated with, that they have built their self identity on, is changing.
Yep. Well, and there's a couple things that I'd share with that. So long before, so back in my manufacturing days, one of the facilities I worked in had been acquired by multiple owners
Mhm.
over the course of that facility's history. And even though, gosh, when I came in, I think it was 7 or 8 years past the
Mm.
last acquisition, and most employees still would not call the organization by the name of the company that had purchased them, would not do it. And they still hung on to that heritage identity that you're speaking to out of pride,
Mhm.
also out of feeling like they had been disrespected and not heard
Mhm.
over the years. And I remember thinking, we are so long past this. Why are we getting hung up on this? Because I came in so much later. And what I didn't understand at the time that I think I understand a little bit better now is that all of these emotions that people can go through are
Mhm.
normal. I was
Mhm.
just on the phone with a client this morning and I said, listen, what you're experiencing, it might be frustrating,
Mhm.
and this is a normal response. This doesn't mean that this you need to hang out here,
Right.
right? So we can talk about what we can do. But as I think about, even my personal experience in food manufacturing, if I could go back with some of that, I think I would do some things differently
Mhm.
or more than what I did during that time because it was so necessary to be able to honor where people had been and then to be able to start setting that direction forward instead
Mhm.
of allowing our team to just hang out here. And kind of getting back to what we covered in our last episode, too, making sure that our leaders were also, our frontline supervisors specifically, had been given the opportunity also to move forward on that journey a little bit
Mhm.
further ahead so that they could
Mhm.
help pull those team members. Because I just don't know that they were well equipped to be able to do that because they hadn't been given that opportunity to process through those experiences themselves.
And the losses they may be facing.
100%.
Well, and I had somebody ask in a session that we were talking through why we're going forward anyway, kind of why
Hmm.
do we need to think about it this way? And the thing that I want to point out there is yes, we are moving forward anyway. So any of this comment or reflection on feeling or noticing the losses that people may be experiencing is in no way saying, hey, we're going to hold off on where we're going. We're still going there.
Right.
That's still a direction we're going. It is you look at it differently and you respond differently when you realize how the change is a loss for individuals. So to me, this goes to that you're taking a step back to understand the situation so that you can move faster going forward. And I really love the word that you used back there was we can honor
Hmm.
people and where they've been and what they've done and move through in that process. Then you start to look at it in terms of this person isn't just being a pain in the butt. They're not trying to
Right.
be a stick in the mud. They're not trying to be the grouch. They're feeling that loss. Even if it's a let's hear them and honor them, recognize that and encourage them to move through.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, once somebody feels the loss, what's next? Then what do they go through?
Yeah. So what you can't see is me doing my famous hand motions of
She
kind of the
is. Mhm.
Kubler-Ross curve right
Mhm.
now. So I'll back up for a second. So the first couple phases that are in that Kubler-Ross change curve are shock and denial. So
Mhm.
shock, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Denial, oh, there's no way they're going to be able to pull this off, right? I'll just wait this one out. They'll move on to another priority next month. No big deal. Then we get into frustration and depression. Depression is not the clinical diagnosis. Depression is simply, I just don't know how I fit into this. I don't know that I'm ever going to get the hang of this. It might be kind of starting to disengage
Mhm.
overall.
That's the word. I was thinking about this yesterday because truly was thinking about this yesterday, not related to the podcast of that depression really is disengagement.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
that's the word to me that stands out the most. Of they just
Yeah.
disengage out of the process, the discussion, the work, the
Because I get stuck. I don't know
mhm.
what to do
Mhm.
and I'm not ready to move forward.
Mhm.
So often when we start to see people start to move on up out of that deep part of the Kubler-Ross change curve, you start to move more into experiment. And experiment, the way that I describe it for clients, is more of a resigned acceptance.
Mhm.
It's that, okay, fine. If this isn't going to change, I guess I'll figure it out. And so we haven't yet seen that person say, "Oh, yeah, I think this is a great move." That's too big of a jump for somebody to be like, "Ugh, I'm disengaging," to, "Yeah, I think I'm on board with this." No
Mhm.
way. Chances are they're gonna go through, I have nothing better I have nothing better to do. There's no sense in fighting this any longer. I guess I'll give it a shot. And so that's often where we'll see people start to take those first few steps and then move into more of like the decision and the integration, where eventually we're able to look back and say, huh, I can't believe we put up with that for as long as we did. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, what took us so long to get on board with this? Right? Those are ideal kind of end states. And I use the term end loosely because we're just simply moving on to another change curve for something else. But if I'm thinking about that person who is feeling in that frustration, depression, as a leader, some of the things that I can do for them is help them see what is that first thing I need them to try. Continue to come back to those why messages and the what messages. We also want you to be clear with what the expectations are.
Mhm.
So you can still honor someone and give them the benefit of the doubt while also setting clear expectations. It does not have to be a one thing or the other. Right? I think of one of our favorite tools with contrasting statements here can be really powerful of I'm not saying that this isn't going to be a challenge. I'm not saying that this is going to be easy to move through. I'm not saying that I want you to get on board with this immediately. I am saying that here are the two things. Here's the one thing that I need to see you take action on so that I can continue to support you. And beyond just setting that expectation, it's also making sure that we're recognizing the progress,
Mm.
that we're not recognizing the eventual outcome only, that we're recognizing the work that's going in to get us there. I think about this with my kids, and I've been trying to be very purposeful in how I am recognizing them for their achievements. In that, I don't want the recognition to be just about the achievement. I don't want it to be about the goals that you scored in soccer or the time that you dropped in swim or that orchestra that you made because that's the outcome. How can I recognize the progress that led up to that eventual achievement? It's the you got in the pool for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week for months on end. You met that goal. It's the you practiced your violin even when you didn't want to, and with a metronome even when you didn't want to, and those are the things that, because you did that, have led to these achievements. And so, I think as leaders, a lot of times we forget to recognize the progress, and we're only seeing recognition as worthy, quote unquote, as when the objective is finished.
Well, and I think um, one of the ways that leaders can really do this, it's fascinating. So we've seen this with the Kubler Ross change curve used in a couple of ways. We've used it with clients who are going through changes and having meetings with their leadership teams to talk about, okay, what are you hearing? What are you hearing from people? What are you
Yes.
seeing from people? And we did that weekly so we can
Mhm.
start to see, okay, that kind of the bubble is shifting, right? That more people are moving so you can feel that progress and you don't always get stuck on the but these people, you don't always just focus on the loudest, right?
Yes.
You can start to see people move through. And the other thing was that was a great way to then recognize where we were stuck as a whole, of like, okay, we're no longer hearing some of these types of comments. People are actually starting to practice. And then,
Right.
and then, if we'd moved for weeks and then if we were stuck for a couple of weeks in the same point, then that was the point where we knew we had to go forward. But being able to really see where people are at as a whole. We've actually had
Mhm.
some clients, and this depends on how comfortable your teams are, drawing a change curve on a flip chart in the back of the room, and as people come in, have them mark where they are. Now
Right.
that takes a lot of trust. You can't always just step into that. Either way, it's taking that moment to recognize where people are. um,
Mhm.
and then my other point is that moment of disengagement, and you talked about how we get people through that disengagement and those steps that you can take. I think some of the issue is we don't even recognize that somebody's in that disengagement, that we have people that have been dug their heels in and they don't want to
Yeah.
change. And every meeting they're pushing back. And then in the next meeting, they don't push back and you go, oh,
Thank goodness.
Right? Finally, they're on board. And we misinterpret silence for
Mhm.
agreement or silence as bought in, when actually silence can be further disengagement, which can be a
Right.
risky place. I was talking to a co op manager who was going through a merger, not to go back to use merger examples, but going through a merger. And I asked, how's it going? And he said, I think it's going really well. We sent out the information to all of our members and we didn't hear anything back. And I, I started like, it was making me nervous because I thought he was seeing silence as a good thing
Mhm.
when it could be a good thing. We don't know yet. So what I
Right.
shared is who are your most vocal people? Who are the people that you expected to get a call from and didn't? And why don't you pick up the phone and give them a call? Just just to engage, to get a sense, to not assume that it's agreement. And that same thing applies to our employees. Who are the ones that you expected to push back and then didn't,
Right.
or had been pushing back and then stopped? It's time to check in with them
Mhm.
so that we're not assuming that silence is agreement.
Well, and I think kind of coming back to what can we do when somebody is kind of down in that space and to help move them forward as well. One of the concepts that Dan and Chip Heath talk about in the book Switch,
Mm,
fabulous book, by the way. One of the concepts that they talk about is finding the bright spots.
mm,
And it's finding in your change, there's someone who's trying something.
mhm,
They're experimenting with this. They're not putting up with the same level of resistance. They're moving forward in it. And rather than be like, "Oh my gosh, I wish I had, 10 of these people," it's more purposefully engaging with them to find out
mhm,
what is it that they're doing? What are the lessons that they're learning along the way that helped them move,
mhm,
right? They are the bright spot in the change. And how can what they have learned so far help support other people who are further behind them in the change curve?
mhm,
Because odds are you have a bright spot. You have a bright spot within your organization. It might not be that they are completely bought in. It might be that they're trying a little bit of this. And that's the bright spot. So let's kind of narrow down that concept of what that bright spot could look like. Before we end our show, let me leave you with a question. What would it feel like to leave the office every day, not just knowing that your managers and supervisors had everything under control, but that you were confident that the direction they were giving your team members was creating and reinforcing the kind of great culture in your business that the entire community talked about? The kind of culture where customers went out of their way to work with you instead of the competition because they were cared for, consistent, and kind. If that sounds like the ag business you've always wanted, stick with me for just another minute. Too many ag business owners and general managers, yes, even the big ones, find themselves stuck. They're juggling customer questions that their leaders should be able to handle and somehow ending up as the bottleneck of decision making in their own business. It feels like they can never get out of the day-to-day long enough to develop their talent, their business, and their own future. Sound familiar? You've worked hard to get where you are, but staying stuck here isn't sustainable. Not only that, it's costing you time, energy, and future growth. The good news, you don't have to figure this out all alone. That's why we offer you the opportunity to schedule a free culture development session. This no obligation, no pressure call is your chance to explore whether our programs are the right fit for you. Our programs have helped ag businesses across the U.S. like you to build great work teams and cultures, retain great employees, and develop plans for your business's success, all while freeing up more time for you. When you schedule your free culture development session, here's what you'll get: a personalized conversation with an expert advisor who's seen firsthand what it takes to break through barriers and achieve the culture and outcomes you're seeking. The opportunity to see how our programs can help you define your business and people strategies, and actionable insights tailored to your goals so you can start moving towards the business you've always envisioned. If you're ready to stop spinning your wheels and start building the ag business you deserve, here's what to do next. Visit this link in the show notes and book your free culture development session today. Don't wait, the next big breakthrough might be just one conversation away. Thanks for listening to today's episode.
I was even thinking about one of the other stories I tend to tell is about a client that we were working with who had an employee who pushed back consistently on new tools. So they would
Mhm.
have new tools that they would try to implement to make the job go easier. And when I mean tools, like different types of hammers and things like that. So we're not talking
Right.
like, hey, a huge ERP. This is literally hand tools to do the work that they were doing. And this person consistently pushed back, and the leader was like, oh, why? And one of the things that we said was acknowledge it and ask. So what we encouraged him to say was, I noticed, because people want to be noticed. They may not say
Mhm.
that. They want to be noticed. They want to be seen. They want to be heard and valued. I noticed that the last 3 times we wanted to implement tools, that you said that you weren't going to use them. When I shared this tool, you had this response. When I shared this tool, you had this response. It makes me feel like you're not open to change. What are your thoughts? And he said it was fascinating because the employee had never looked at it that way. I think
Mhm.
the employee was just kind of stuck in that nope, 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 nope. That all of a sudden the leader held up a mirror to him to say, this is how I'm perceiving you based on the behaviors that I had. And the employee went, oh, oh. And those, what was it, 3, 4 sentences was enough to change the behavior
Right.
of the employee.
Right.
So
Right.
so as we talk about this and kind of the we're seeing resistance again, it comes off as a big thing when it is notice and say something. Notice and say
Mhm.
something. Whether it's recognition, notice it and say something. Whether it's pushback that you're receiving, notice and say something. Even if you applied that across the responses that you get in the change curve, it may not be perfect. That action will get you so much further.
Absolutely.
So, Erin, what would be your one thing?
So I think where I would start is to consider what are the things that you're hearing from your employees. What are the typical comments? And don't just think about the squeaky wheel. Think
Mhm.
about what you're hearing kind of across your employee population. What are those comments? Where might those tell you that people are stuck on that change curve or where they might be further ahead in some areas? The second part of that would be then, okay, who are some of those bright spots within the organization that maybe I've, given them a pat on the back kind of recognition, but that I haven't necessarily really tapped into to understand what it is that they're doing, to recognize them for the progress that they're making and to learn from them because so that I can help others along in that. So I think it's listen for and identify where my team is today, and then think about and consider who are those bright spots and what is it about what they're doing that can help others.
What I heard is notice where your people are. I'm going to come back to the
I
word
know.
notice. Notice.
Totally.
And
What would you add?
I, to me, that big aha of the loss, and even thinking
Mhm.
about it in terms of the loss, you can address it up front.
Right.
So some of that
Right.
you can stop right ahead of time. I was thinking about one of the changes that I was referring to earlier, where we were implementing a system, and I thought, what are the concerns? What are the losses that people are going to feel as we implement this? And one of my thoughts was, they're going to feel like they're losing control of their team. They're going to feel like they're losing control of their ability to lead their teams. So when we started to put together some of the communication, I put what is changing, the tools and systems that we're using, what's not changing, your ability to make a decision about your team.
Right.
So I could start to and that's not in every case. Sometimes their losses aren't going to be able to be their losses are true, not
Mhm.
perceived. So it won't be that easy, but some of those cases that was a like, "Oh, I'm going to add in one additional line that I know is going to reduce resistance later on." So taking that lens of what loss may somebody feel.
Awesome. I love it.
So good.
Well, I hope that this episode has been helpful for you as you're thinking about, or even if you find yourself like, why can't I get this team on board? Why is this so complicated? Why is this taking forever? I hope that this has provided you with some pieces of information that you can consider for your own
Mhm.
team. and what support additionally they might need from you or from the other leaders as well to be able to move through that change. This has been the People Spark Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to bringing you more. The best way you can support us is by liking and subscribing this podcast wherever you subscribe to your podcasts.
Thank you so much for hanging with us today. We are looking forward to continuing the conversations with all of you.